Hello and welcome to Chapter 9. Today we're going to be talking about skills and technical training. And I think you'll find this chapter interesting because I'm sure you've all been through some sort of training when you've started a new job. So as we go through this, try to think about companies that you've worked for. How did you develop the skills necessary to do your job there? What was the training like? So kind of think about that as we go through. There's a critical need in today's workplace to provide employees with specific skills and technical training needed to perform their jobs efficiently and effectively. And this is the result of there's a lot of increased new technology in the workplace, as well as organizations are trying to remain competitive and continually changing their goals and becoming more innovative. So this makes this chapter especially important and timely in organizations. So the training is needed in organizations for a couple reasons. There's currently a skills gap in our country, and what this means is that there's a difference between the skill requirements of available jobs and the skills possessed by job applicants. And this results from the skill levels being achieved by many high school and college graduates not being up to the level needed by companies in the workplace. It's also a growing number of people in our country that English is not their first language, and that causes a barrier. Excuse me, a barrier. And also, jobs are becoming more technical and more sophisticated. Okay. Jobs nowadays need a greater amount of knowledge and skills. A lot of technological advancements are occurring where companies are now depending more upon skilled employees. So 3 types of skill and technical training we're going to talk about in this chapter include basic skills and literacy, which is needed to function in any job. You have to have some basic level of being able to read and write and perform mathematical computations. We're going to talk about technical training, which is a wide range of technical skills. And lastly, interpersonal skills, which focuses on an employee's ability to relate to other people, customers, and other employees. So in the United States, we have different categories of literacy. Prose literacy refers to the skills needed to understand and use information from text. Okay, document literacy is the skills needed and required to locate and use information contained in things that aren't text, things like tables, charts, graphs, forms, things like that. And lastly, quantitative literacy is needed to apply arithmetical operations to different things involved in one's job. So adding, subtracting, multiplying, dividing, and using this in a combination with printed materials, such as things like completing an order form, that sort of thing. And I found the statistics in the book to be quite alarming. It stated that 14% of adults are below basic in prose, 12% are below basic in document, and 22% are below basic in quantitative. And what I thought was really interesting is that only 13% of adults are proficient across all 3 of these areas. Okay, so you got to kind of think about that, and that's why there's this need in the workplace to develop these skills if we expect employees to be efficient and effective at their jobs. So the government has tried to address this problem in the last several years. They've come out with several programs and things, incentives for employers to train and things like that. A lot of them haven't been too effective. They've had ethical issues. Also, a low number of employees really got to participate in those sorts of programs. Okay, the text discusses 5 types of technical training, the first of which is apprenticeship training. And this was initially a way to pass down a skill or a trade from masters to new people coming up called apprentices. And today it's still being used. The book talks about 460,000 apprentices in 700 different job categories. Typically, these programs require 2,000 hours of on-the-job training, which is equivalent to about 1 year full-time on the job, and 144 hours of classroom training. The book talks about some problems with this as well. Okay, but it's still a pretty good way for people to learn, those skills that are required. The next type of training is computer training, and there are 2 types. Introductory computer training is where we teach somebody the basics of computers, the operating system, the hardware, the software, basically to help people overcome fear of computers. Okay, you'd be surprised. A lot of people don't, they're afraid of technology, so this is a way to get them comfortable with that. Then applications training is training on a specific application, like training them for Word or Excel or Access or another computer program. Some issues, self-efficacy is important in training. Trainees need to feel that they are able to do this. Otherwise, they're not going to learn. Cognitive playfulness has been shown to be important. This is where people are spontaneous, they have imagination, they want to explore, and so they bring that to the task of learning about computers. And then the training format's important. It's been shown that behavior modeling is the most effective way to do this as opposed to just self-paced, where you just give somebody something and they do it at their own pace or lecturing. Okay, so technical skills and knowledge training is the next category. This is where we're trying to prepare entry-level employees to perform basic responsibilities. And intermediately, we're using on-the-job training. In advance, we're teaching them how to use machinery and processes. So this is kind of the technical things that someone would need to master in order to be efficient at a job. One type of training is safety training, and safety training is mandated in most companies, either by the company's insurance company and or by OSHA, which is the Occupational Safety and Health Administration, which is the agency of the government that oversees safety in the workplace. And there are very specific mandated requirements that OSHA puts forth. For instance, employers have to train employees on hazard communication law. They have to train them what to do in the event that something occurs in the workplace, how to protect themselves, what personal protective equipment is required, what first aid should they use if something were to occur. So this is mandatory training for new people coming into a work situation. So effective safety management is very important, and there's a table in your book, Table 9.2, that talks about 10 steps. You might want to look at that. But very important that top management supports and reinforces this. And it's good to have employee involvement. When I was an HR manager, I was in charge of safety. I had a safety committee because if the employees are involved, involved, they'll be much more likely to select the correct equipment and accept the procedures. Okay, so regular training programs are required. We have to reinforce standards and behavior and monitor what's going on. And this involves investigating any incidents or accidents that occur and then taking that information and developing possibly a safety program from that if that's found to be a cause of the issue. Let's see. So This talks about computer-based training in OSHA, and OSHA has come out and said that computer-based training is important and it's a great tool, but it doesn't meet the intent of the training requirements because employees, you can't just sit them down at a computer and say, here, learn about safety. They have to be able to ask questions, and the employer has to make sure that they understand what's going on. Otherwise, if this person were to go through the training and then get hurt in the workplace and it came out they really didn't have a chance or exposure to a qualified trainer and a good program, the employer is going to be liable for what happens, and that could run into millions of dollars depending upon what happens. The next area of excuse me. Next area of training is quality training. And this all came about back in the 60s and 70s when the automotive industry wasn't doing so well, and W. Edwards Deming went to Japan and then came back here and talked to industry about total quality management. And what this refers to is continuous improvement. It's a set of principles and practices, but it's always look at how can we make things better. No matter how good a process is, we can always improve it and make it better. And along with this, Deming said that this is done through team effort. So we have to make sure people can work with each other in teams. It also involves collecting data and analyzing that data. So a big part of quality training is quantitative. And as you remember, that was one of those skills that a lot of people don't, come into the workplace with. So that makes this very important in this particular area. So implementing this, first we have quality awareness. We need to make sure that managers understand the concept of quality and how it will change their role, because now teams are going to be doing a lot of work. So we have to work with managers to make sure they understand that. Then we have process skills. We have to train them on ways to improve work coordination, how to solve problems, how to resolve conflicts. Then quality skills, techniques and tools that can be used for tracking quality improvements. So we'll use things like process flow analysis, cause and effect diagrams, statistical process control, histograms, things like that will indicate where problems are or what can be done. So people need to know things like cause and effect analysis, problem solving, how to monitor results, how to recommend courses of action. So all that involves pretty significant, detailed training. And one thing, the main thing that a lot of companies use in this area is statistical process control. So this involves a lot of training of employees. And what this is meant to do is to show how a process is getting out of control. And if you look at this little chart, you can see how it keeps going up. And once it gets up to the upper control limit, something needs to be done to bring it back within the limits. So employees need to be trained on how this works. They have to be trained how to measure parts or whatever this is. They could use calipers or micrometers and measure things and then see if it's meeting standard or if it's slowly going out of standard. Okay, and this is how we build quality into products. Okay. Lastly, the book talks about interpersonal skills and how important that is. And these are also, you hear of soft skills, things like team building, listening, communicating, delegating. And there's an increased need for training because a lot of, nowadays we have a lot of team effort going on. Employers also state that this is an area where new graduates from college often fall short. They don't have the interpersonal skills, the one-on-one skills with people. Okay, so that's becoming a big area. In some areas in organizations where this is used is in sales training, customer service training, team building training. So those are important areas. Sales training, we need to Make sure that there is communication between customers as well as all levels of the organization, because salespeople have to be able to communicate with manufacturing, with other areas, engineering, other areas. Then we have customer service training, okay, and then team building training. Okay, one area where we can look at for development is professional development. This is where we have people in organizations and positions we consider professional, like we have accountants, we have HR. The Association for Talent Development is the one for EHRD. So these are people who are in an occupation where they apply a body of knowledge and techniques acquired through training and experience, and it's kind of a prestigious kind of profession. Okay, so professional associations exist in their private groups that are interested in advancing and protecting the interest of the people in their association, in their profession. So they do certification with HRD people. They become a CPLP, or SHRM become senior professional HR designations. So it involves certification, publications, educational opportunities. There's also continuing education programs at colleges and universities that employees can take advantage of. Those are the main points for Chapter 9. I think there's a lot of information here, so kind of think about what you have experienced as well as what you may experience after you graduate and move into a career. Thank you.